Hey everyone, this is Nitro. In this video, I wanted to talk about Listell once more. Now, I helped update the Listell Gamepedia page, so now the information on this page is much more accurate. So I can talk about her in a more, accurate manner. So, Listell plays out very, very differently in PvP as opposed to PvE. In fact, it's so different that you basically want to have two separate sets of equipment for her. One set for when you use her in PvP, and one set for when you use her in PvE. So, I'll talk about PvE build Listell first, and then after that, I'll talk about the PvP build Listell. So, first, let's talk about Listell's talent. And her talent is that her intelligence is equal to 1.5 times her magic defense. In addition, this unit ignores class disadvantages. So she's demon, which means she ignores the fact that holy units are supposed to do more damage to demons and take less damage. And then finally, after dealing damage, she inflicts Curse of Wounding on the target for one turn, where whenever the target is healed, the curse cancels out the healing effect and deals damage equal to a percentage of the amount that's been nullified. So it starts at 20%, goes up to 30, 40, and then 50, and maxes out at 50%. So basically, if you hit the target, they're not going to be able to be healed, and if people try to heal the character, they're actually going to take damage instead. It's an incredibly devastating ability. So, what this ends up being is that in many ways, Listell is a character that is like, how do you say it? In PvE, she is a magic attack tank. Okay. In terms of skills for her in PvE, you would most likely run the following. Let me just scroll down to her skills section. So, the first skill is most likely to be Siphon. So that's your melee magic attack skill. It has one range, so you can attack enemies doing 1.5 times damage and self-heal for 30% of the damage dealt. Your second skill would be her magic tanking skill, so Demonic Guard. And this skill, normally it will take magic damage for adjacent allies. When you activate Demonic Guard, it increases the magic guard range to 2 blocks. And then whenever the unit receives magic damage from 2 blocks away, it does a counterattack. So magic attackers who hit her or any targets nearby will get a melee attack in return from Listell, probably killing that magic attacker. So, another great skill. And then her final skill would most likely be... The final skill is kind of your choice, but I would say the most likely skill for the final skill would be Bloody Deluge. And the reason for that is because when entering battle, this skill will reflect 50% of the damage received back to the attacker. And after battle, it heals all your other allies for a percentage of this hero's max hit points, equal to 50% of the damage reflected. So yeah, you know, if she gets attacked, she'll do additional damage to the enemy. It's a nice addition. You don't necessarily need this skill for the third one. You know, you can add in yet another attack skill, because Demonic Guard was 2 points, right? Siphon was 1 point, so you still have 2 points to work with. So you could throw in Mind Bore, you could throw in Blood Dance if you wish. The third skill is kind of optional. It's your choice. Alright, so because Listell's intelligence is 1.5 times her magic defense, and she is a magic attack tank, when you're building her for PvE, you want an equipment set that's all about magic defense. So let's go over to the Langrisser Mobile SSR Gear Google Doc, and it's quite simple. So you just really want to stack magic defense on her in this case. And what that means is, let's take a look. So for the weapon, you probably want Blue Moon, because it gives 5% magic defense. Alternatively, you could use the SR item, Secret Art Staff, because that one gives plus 50% damage dealt for single target strikes, which would affect Siphon. So either or, Blue Moon or Secret Art Staff for the weapon. For the armor, the best one would probably be Galaxy Cloak because it gives plus 10% magic defense. And then for helmets, well, helmets you have two choices. You could use Dark Crown for the plus 10% magic defense here. You could also use, let's see, it was Soul Stealer Headdress, right? Because Soul Stealer Headdress is after taking action, there's a 50% chance to deactivate active skills of one enemy within 3 blocks. So that would be another great one. Soul Stealer Headdress or Dark Crown. So those would be her best helmets for PvE content. And then for SSR accessory, you really just want magic defense, right? So, but my personal recommendation is Speed Boots, the SR item, because it gives +1 mobility. +1 mobility and plus magic defense, that makes it the best item. You could use, let's say Veil of Light for 48 magic defense and 8% magic defense, but my opinion is mobility for PvE is more important than a bit more magic defense value. So that's why I suggest Speed Boots. So that would be a PvE Build Listell, where you're focusing on pumping up her magic defense, and then you'll just do damage that way. Now, if you're doing PvE though, she completely changes. A PvP Listell is all about her single skill Blood Dance. Blood Dance does 0.1 times AoE damage to all enemies within 2 blocks, and another 50% of her hit points as fixed damage when the turn ends. However, the hero does lose the same amount of hit points. Well, if you're relying on purely, almost exclusively on this skill, what that means is you just want to pump up your hit points as much as possible. Max out the hit point value so that when she uses this skill, it's going to do a ridiculous amount of damage. And that means her equipment completely changes, and even her enchant completely changes. So, alright, I forgot to mention, for the PvE Listell, right, your enchants you just want plus magic defense percentage. And then the enchant you would choose, it's kind of up to you. You are using one single attack skill, right? So clocks would not hurt, for example. You could do 2 separate enchants that give magic defense. It's kind of up to you how you want to build that in terms of the enchant. So, but let's go back to the PvP Listell now. So, PvP Listell, in terms, because your skill set now will be probably Blood Dance for the AoE attack. You'll want Seal simply because when damage is dealt to the enemy, right, there's a 50% chance to silence the enemy active skills for 2 rounds. And then for the third skill, that one's kind of up to you. I would usually say Mind Bore. Yes, it's based on her magic damage, but in this case, you're doing it more for the enemy magic damage taken is increased by 20% for 2 rounds. So with these 3 skills, 2 AoE attacks and Seal, your main damage comes from Blood Dance. And so, with Blood Dance, doing 50% of your hit points in damage, you want to completely pump up hit points. What that means is a PvP Listell, every equipment that she wears should give hit points. So, Red Moon, for example, would be the weapon, because it gives 5% hit points. It's the only weapon, I believe, that gives hit points that she can equip anyways. After Red Moon is, in terms of armors, she actually has 2 choices of armors. One is, of course, the one that gives plus hit points, which is Tenyo's Robe. The other one is Demon Lizard Skin, because it also gives, both of them give plus 10% hit points, and Demon Lizard Skin is, when attacked, there's a 50% chance to deal 1 random debuff to the enemy. For Tenyo's Robe, when attacked, 30% chance to dispel 1 buff and add a debuff to the enemy before battle. So both of them work. I would say Tenyo's Robe is better because it gives more hit points, right? Tenyo's Robe gives 582 hit points. Demon Lizard Skin gives 509. So, Tenyo's Robe. For helmets, you also want to increase hit points. So, there's 2 options once again. Najord's Feathered Crown, which is 436 hit points and 58 magic defense, and plus 10% hit points. Also, when you're battling against enemies with less hit points than you, defense and magic defense is increased by 15%. So, generally speaking, after you hit all the enemies with AoE attacks, any survivors should have less hit points than Listell. So then this skill will kick in. Other than Najor's Feathered Crown, you can also use Tenyo's Headdress. It does give less hit points, once again, so Najor's Feathered Crown is better in terms of the hit point buff, but this one is that after action, you have a 100% chance to grant a random buff on an ally within 2 blocks. So, this buff could always be useful, so it doesn't hurt. I would say overall, Najor's Feathered Crown is better than Tenyo's Headdress, but if you don't have one, you can use the other item. And finally, let's talk about accessories. For PvP, I would say her best accessory is Blood Pact. Simply because, look at this, it gives 1,102 hit points. That's 600 more hit points than any other SSR accessory. In addition, it gives plus 15% hit points. So, Blood Pact is amazing accessory for Listell, buffing her hit points by that much. And then in terms of her enchants, my personal recommendation for Listell is to run 2 enchants that each give 10% hit points. So let's say you have 2 Tree of Life, or 2 Thorns, or 2 Steel, and then mix up 2 of those. That way you're getting 20% more hit points from those. So, just as a quick note, from her gear, each item giving hit points, she will actually end up with plus 40% hit points from the gear. The double enchant will give another plus 20%, so she's at plus 60% hit points. Okay? And then for her actual enchant values, for every item you would want plus hit points and plus percent hit points. Okay? Let me quickly bring that up. The enchanting page of the Gamepedia. Alright, here we go. So, weapons, the hit points cap out at plus 131 hit points and plus 10% hit points. Armor, it gets plus 201 hit points, plus 15% hit points. Helmet is the same as armor, plus 201 hit points, plus 15% hit points. And finally, accessory is the same as the weapon. Accessory can give you a total of plus 131 hit points and plus 10% hit points. So, if you manage to get plus percentage hit points on every single one and plus hit points, you're talking about a total of plus 15, 15, 10, 10. That's 50% more hit points. And in terms of actual hit point value, it's 131 plus 131 plus 201 plus 201. And that's 664 more hit points. So you're talking another 50% hit points and 664 hit points. All of that adds up to plus 110% hit points from gear and enchantments, and plus 664 hit points from the enchant. Wow. So, in other words, let's go back to Listell. If her max stats are as stated on this page, like that she can have 3,866 hit points or so, right? You're adding 110% to that, and another 664. So you're going to end up with over 8k hit points. Now, remember as well that I don't know what the percentage boost is, but when you do PvP, you definitely get additional hit points. You don't have your basic stats. There seems to be, like, let's say a 30% stat boost to hit points or something similar to that. So, yeah, it means if you're doing 50% of your hit points in damage, 8,000 hit points, you're doing at least 4,000 AoE damage in your single target strike, or in your AoE strike, okay? Most heroes don't have quite that much hit points. For example, if I open up my Leon with his almost max gear has what? 3,054 plus 1,727, so he has 4,781 hit points. If he gets hit by an AoE that does 4,000 damage, he's ruined. And especially since Listell's AoE applies a cannot be healed debuff. So there you go. So that's it for how you would build Listell in PvE as opposed to PvP. It's two completely different sets of gear with two completely different sets of focus on the gear. So that's everything I wanted to say. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful because it really does show that Listell has two completely different builds depending on whether you're using her for PvP or PvE. And on that note, Nitro out.